everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast based on writers sitting around drinking something and talking about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. Your hosts today are Karen and Chaz Brenchley, and me, Jeannie Warner. This is episode 33, Mystery and Crime. Dum dum dum. I really wanted to talk about I picked the topic this week because last week, as you know, I'm sure you all listened to us carefully, we were talking about word counts. And as we were talking about the different things on word counts, I found an interesting blog, Bruce Cantwell's blog out there, talking about numbers. And he was saying thriller novels these days, the modern thriller novel, look at the Tom Clancy and the others, run into 100,000 words. But I went and picked up my copy of Mickey Spillane's The Deep, which I can't stand, but I also can't stand to throw out. Can't tell you why, it's very confusing. And it's a tiny little book. It's like a dime store paperback novel. So Bruce brought up the thing of what if F. Scott Fitzgerald had been told, well, The Great Gatsby's all right, but can you give me another 52,096 words? You know, let's get that, push that over the top. So how much is enough? What is enough when you're writing crime?
Yeah. But that is not particularly an issue about the genre. That's an issue about publishing. Commercial realities dictated that in the 30s and 40s and 50s, novels were short. The same commercial realities dictated in the 70s and 80s that novels should be longer. And then with the sort of writerly inflation that came around, particularly, and I'm sorry to say this, but it is absolutely true, with the advent of word processors rather than typewriters. Suddenly, we were writing 150,000 words, and it was easier to publish them than edit them. There's a famous quotation out there, I'm sorry this letter is so long, but I didn't have time to write a short one.
I think that was Mark Twain, wasn't it?
I think...
Or it's attributed to him.
It's one of those things. I mean, if you produce any clever quote these days, somebody's going to say, that's Mark Twain, and point at the internet. I can't remember who it actually was. But it is true that I wrote a 150,000 word fantasy novel in about 4 months. My shortest novel ever is barely 70,000 words, and that one took me 9 months. It's harder work to write within a closer context.
I can see that. And we did, again, in previous episode, talked a little bit about how you need the extra space for world building.
However, so one of the things, I read a lot of mysteries as well as science fiction. I know it's a sin here, but
it's not a sin.
But anyway, and I read all sorts, and there in each one is world building. One of my favorite series is by Barbara Hambley, and it starts with A Free Man of Color, and it is about, it's set in New Orleans at a time when being a free black man was very dangerous because slavery was still a thing. That's world building. The main character is a doctor from France, a black man, doctor from France, who must come and play the piano for money in New Orleans because no one will hire him. Lots of world building. However, her novels are not huge fat novels. They're still, I can't tell you how many word counts, but they're still, reasonable small size. On the other hand, another series I like, don't choke, Chaz, is the one written by an American about the British Earl Thomas Linley, whatever, who happens to work for Scotland Yard, even though he's an Earl. It's Americans love Earls. And
I'm choking here.
Yeah, he's choking here. And she does lots and lots of world building about her version of England. And
yes,
and
I'm not sure England really needed rebuilding in that way, but hey.
But anyway, they're I really like them. They seem to be popular, though I don't think she's come out with one recently. So however, mysteries, as you know, the one about the mystery series where the cat is the sleuth half of the time, the mystery about everyone collects yarn, you know, I'm not making this stuff
I don't
up.
think I've read that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, but these ones, these are just set in, you know, they're set with housewives, okay, or, you know, the women's sleuth ones, those tend to be smaller, and I wonder if that is related to romance. The same, we were talking about that too. You know, you don't have a big fat romance. Okay, you also, I think if this is aimed at the same audience, I'm not a publisher, but it would make sense that they would be along the same lines in terms of length and portability.
Yeah, those books are within the cozy tradition, and the cozy tradition has always run shorter than the sort of the grimdark of police procedurals or thrillers.
How long are Val's?
Val's are up there in the 100,000 plus.
He means Val McDermid.
I do.
He's
just
a good
in case
friend.
anybody was wondering.
But I was going to say something gorgeously important and evocative.
Well, I think for me, I wanted to think about it in terms of rip this apart to the bones, if you don't mind for a moment.
Sure.
Agatha Christie.
Yes.
Murder on the Orient Express, 50,900 some odd words.
Sure.
So that if I took about one of the great modern big 100-page lists and said 58,000 of it is an investigator talking to people, because talking to people is what advances a plot. And description of events, which, you know, you need to set a scene and you need to describe and you need new information and then you move on to the next scene. How do you write that part of it? I mean, I presume that we can all with practice go through and pad anything. We can take, I would love to rewrite Raymond Chandler in a more interesting way. Sorry, Raymond. But to add, you know, the smell, the look, the feel, the tactile things that interest us as modern people. Sometimes for a modern audience to interject a little bit of humor or something to make somebody more human and approachable, because all of the film noir detectives were a bunch of bastards. But you can't write a girl as a bastard because, you know, nobody will read it, they tell me. So how do how would you pad it? What do you need at the very basis of the bones of a whodunit? How did you write one? How did you write your first one, Jess?
I have never technically written a whodunit.
Okay.
In that sense that you start with a crime and through the process of the book, following clues, you figure out who done it. I've not done that.
But you have done a what's going on.
I have done a what's going on.
Which in many ways can amount to the same thing, although it's not quite the room full of people with the accusations at the end.
Yeah, but as usual, you know, I am the outlier. I am the heretic. I don't follow. And when my first agent was talking to me about the kind of books she thought I should write, she said, consider writing a crime novel. And you know how you do that, of course. You start at the back and work forwards.
Sounds like your agent is actually your consigliere, doesn't it? they're not really just an agent. They're more like, they're your lawyer and you're the great
totally.
Don. And
a good agent is all sorts of things. A travel agent, as well as my first agent again had a client who was being sent by her publisher on a on a book tour of New Zealand, and she phoned Carol in a bit of a crisis and said, "I don't want to go all the way to New Zealand on my own." "Don't worry, dear," said Carol. "Of course I'll come with you." So they went to New Zealand together, and when they got back, I asked Carol what it had been like, and she said, "It's a very long way to go to spend 3 weeks in 1950s England."
Well, I think New Zealand is beautiful.
So
at the very least, you should drive around New Zealand and get lost a number of times.
Certainly.
And I thought that was just heartwarming that the agent was willing to go. Traveling for 3 weeks to a different place. And it was just so thoughtful.
Almost certainly not at her own expense.
Yeah.
So here's the thought.
Hello.
If we were going to be rewriting The Murder on the Orient Express today, as a thriller, which it may be. So I have 58,000 words of bones here. Do you think, where would you plant clues? Would you add things? Would you add pieces? I mean, let's say you've finished one and you think to yourself, this is gorgeous, it's the perfect murder mystery novel, and it's 60,000 words, it's 50,000 words because I wrote it for NaNoWriMo. Plugging for those of you who wrote something in NaNoWriMo. 50,000 words is not a modern novel.
It's not, no.
What might we recommend as looking at? Do you think check your strings? Did you tie up all your strings? Did you use the gun on every mantle of Chekhov's fireplace?
What I would go with, so you've got, I'm assuming you're talking about, we have one character, one point of view character, whether first or third person, who is solving the mystery. Okay?
Or the very evil second person that I can't stand.
Yeah,
sorry.
I would add more about the people. I would expand the people because they are just puzzle pieces. It's like Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard and that kind of thing from Clue. It's I would give them more personality but unfortunately, if you're going through the dour, just the facts, ma'am, kind of policeman, you're not going to get that from that point of view. The main character is going to have the problem solver, the policeman, whatever, is going to have to change because one of the reasons you can get away with such spare novels is because the text is spare because the main character is only focused on these things. You don't get
he has no conflict.
And the witnesses and so forth that he interviews, or she interviews, are again one-dimensional and only have one point of view, which it is our detective's job to chisel out. I would like at this point to raise the glorious spectre of Dorothy L. Sayers, who is the one.
I love her.
Yeah, we all love her.
God. I was thinking of her too.
She is the one crime writer of the Golden Age who genuinely wrote about people. I mean, her first books are slender. The first one, Whose Body, it's probably 50,000 words. And they rapidly expand because she needs the room, because she starts introducing actual characters.
Because she did not write mystery. She wrote novels with detective interruptions.
Yeah, I mean, it's particular towards the end of the series.
I got to say, in some of them, I have tackled a couple of the longer ones that are thrillers these days, like The Hunt for Red for October and a couple others. And one of the challenges for me sometimes is the one-dimensionality still of the hero. Of the hero in particular. Now they're starting to, maybe it's that to add it 10,000 pages just on,
Pages?
Yeah.
10,000 pages?
I'm saying adding 10,000 pages on the personality of the people the complex.
You mean words?
Well, I paid words, whatever.
But
no, water, I swear.
The Hunt for Red October is a whole separate sort of issue because that's a military thriller rather than anything remotely resembling a crime novel. But if you look at let's look at Thomas Harris.
Let's.
Yeah. I love Thomas Harris. But his characters are complicated without being complex, I think. There is...
It is because of him that I wrote The Bluebirds.
Right. It is because of him that I have a publishing career.
Yeah.
Because I had this long talk with my first agent, and she said, "Chaz, what do you want to write?" And I said, well, I love Dick Francis, but I don't want to write about horses. I love John le Carré, but I don't want to write about spies. I love Stephen King, but I don't want to write horror, yada, yada, all through this.
Right.
And she said, have you ever read Thomas Harris? And I said, who? And she said, he's an American crime thriller writer. I've just agented his book Red Dragon over here, she said. Take this away, she said, tossing a copy at me, and read it, because I think you could do something similar. So I took it away and I read it, and then I wrote my first novel. I mean, it took me 4 years, but nevertheless.
Well, I owe The Silence of the Lambs of sitting there watching it.
Right.
And I was watching it with my friend who was a parole officer in Denver. And at the end of it, I said, well, thank goodness there's no serial killers in Denver. And he looked at me a little sideways and said, Jeannie, there's 2. What? He said, oh, yeah, there's at least 2. Minimum 2 in almost every major city, because what they did is they killed homeless people and they killed prostitutes and they killed the people that don't make the papers.
Yes.
And so that is my social justice warrior, if you like, of a murderer, because she gets mad that nobody cares. Yeah. People kill and nobody cares.
To be fair, the great British serial killer of my youth killed prostitutes in Leeds, which is not a city that's commonly in the news much. And it was front page for however long he went on doing this. They may only have been prostitutes, according to the press, but nevertheless.
But see what you just said.
Yeah, I know. I did that deliberately.
Okay. All
right. Just anything, this timeliness. You would talk about we care very much that a 13-year-old died in a helicopter crash, but what about the thousands that are dead of influenza this year?
Or in cages.
Or in cages,
Exactly, yes.
One death is a tragedy. 1,000 deaths is a statistic, which means why we look into murder mystery novels, because they're all about one death at a time. And our emotions can compass it, and we can empathize, and we can wrap ourselves around one at a time.
Yeah.
Even if they're in a string, like 24 or one of the others, or...
So now we need a murder mystery or a murder movie about one child dying, and they're having to in the cages, and they're having to solve that mystery, and maybe.
And they need a reason to solve that mystery.
And they need a reason to solve that mystery, and.
And they're fighting all the complexities of the bureaucracy and the military and who don't want anything there investigated.
Well, especially...
this is a book, people.
I know. And then here we are saying, okay, but we have to do why would somebody care? And it almost has to be a story like, wasn't it one of the leaders of the NAACP had somebody try to give her guff on an air. She was asked to give up a seat.
Oh, yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
On a train and without saying anything. But something like this, you'd have to figure out that maybe the mother of the child had been fleeing South America but her husband was important or somebody, and they're after her and she has special knowledge, and there's your plot. And
a vacationing mistress of the Mercer guy or something.
Yeah.
So we're talking about it. This is how we might plot it, writing a synopsis. So there she is. She goes over. And then you have to decide to MacGuffin or not to MacGuffin.
I have never made that decision in my life.
No?
You might have to explain it.
A MacGuffin is a magic thing. Horcruxes, or it doesn't even have to be magic. The Maltese Falcon was a MacGuffin. An object that has a clue. I need the secret key. Somebody has the object. The object that is the most important piece and advances the plot as the need to acquire it or do something with it in terms of a MacGuffin. So
that's a very fair definition.
Yeah.
But I don't plot my books that way.
Yeah. The plotting around a MacGuffin is, I suppose it might be easier sometimes. Like, we have to find this.
Yeah, it's a classic fantasy trope. is it? I mean, I suppose you have to find the clue that will reveal
strange
the killer.
Women lying in ponds distributing MacGuffins.
Right.
Yeah. You know?
Exactly.
Or Treasure Island. Let's find the magic chest, or or the chest of gold.
The black spot.
Yeah, I mean that's
I love
standard.
Treasure Island.
Yeah, well, that's the standard thing.
Yeah.
Is you're looking for a thing.
Right.
You're looking for a thing. Everything about you know. You must talk to all the people. You must go all the distance. You must, change your body. I have no idea, but you must, to get to the MacGuffin, which is
it's almost a classic D&D treasure trope, really.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
But that's what the murder mystery is. The MacGuffin is whodunit.
Right.
Okay.
It comes down to it's whodunit.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Is the MacGuffin whodunit, or is the MacGuffin the clue that reveals whodunit?
I think
there would usually be the clue. The smoking gun. A smoking gun is
smoking gun.
Okay.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And that's if you're trying to find the whodunit. And we all, I think in America, we all watched Columbo when we were younger. Well, just one more thing. Just one more question. At the end of Kojak.
In the UK, we also watched Columbo.
Oh, excellent. Or Quincy MD was the same thing that used forensic medical investigation to try to solve crimes. So.
Okay, in the UK, we did not watch Quincy MD.
They had that one show. My mother was just
medical examiner.
Oh, sorry.
But my mother was so entranced by that it had Macmillan and Wife one week, and someone else the next week, and someone else the third week. Columbo might have been one of them, but I don't know. I don't think so. But it was those kinds of shows that were just so popular.
What about Dick and Dora? The Thin Man. What about
Nick and Nora?
Yeah.
Nick and Nora, the Thin Man.
I don't know what
there
this
was
is.
The Saint.
The Saint. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I remember The Saint.
There was a whole series of how do you wrap each one of those in one small episode, which, to a certain extent, if you view Darkly Dreaming Dexter, Season 1 is basically the first book.
Yeah.
Season 2 is this,
Right.
And so they broke it apart that way. So
that's standard.
If you're thinking to yourself, I want to write something, here is my arc, here are my pieces, here's my chapter way of getting there. Episodically writing is another way to approach it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because in the end, there's a big crime I'm trying to solve, but I could solve a lot of little crimes along the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have to be a murder detective. I could be a postman just trying to figure out what's happened to,
Yeah.
who are all these going for. So what's going to happen next, I suppose, is a better way instead of who did it? It's more like what's going to happen next is where you need to create this suspense.
Well, one of the things that, because it's exactly what's going to happen next. We just watched season 4 of Veronica Mars, which I love Veronica Mars, or the latest season, whatever, the brand new season. Yeah. And there were bombs, okay? And so there was a new bomb every episode, and where does that come from? And so that, there's a new little crime, there's a new something that comes along. And one of the other things I've noticed in mystery novels is the main character will have a love interest who often in the first book meets the love interest. In the second book, the love interest becomes involved and becomes someone for the bad guy to attack. Okay,
Certainly.
So there's and things like that.
It's like Batman and Robin, the boy hostage.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, or I'm sorry, but there was long ago with the second Robin, and everyone hated the second Robin, and DC Comics said you can vote whether or not to kill him, and it was 25 cents a call for the vote, and they voted, and he died, and then they brought him back. Dan DiDio, who was in charge of DC, brought it back, and at a convention, someone came up to him and said, "I want my quarterback." Sorry about the digression, but
yeah, sidekick status seems to be an interesting. Does every successful thing needs a sidekick?
No, I mean, obviously, if you look at the fictional record, the answer is no, because Agatha Christie. Hercule Poirot has a sidekick, but Miss Marple does not.
Well, it's like it depends on
Lord
the
Peter
environment.
Lord Peter doesn't really have a sidekick.
But they live alone and they're ordinary people. Look at the police detectives.
Right.
There's always the detective and the assistant. I mean, it's the environment. They're
Marple
lives alone.
We get into buddy. Can you do a buddy novel? Murder mystery is an interesting question. Can you do it's sort of like the buddy novel crime. You do it the other way around. You can, like Truman Capote wrote on In Cold Blood, from the things where they were the two kids together that were buddy criminals.
Yes.
So the buddy system could be very important for good or evil within the system.
Yeah.
You know, what if it's not one? What if it was really his wife? What if it was really his kid and they were covering for him? You know, there's a lot of options for buddy action.
Well, and in what if it's two killers? I mean, because on the movie on a cross-Atlantic movie, I saw a horrible true life story about the two little boys who killed a third little boy. Kidnapped him and killed
the
it.
British thing.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, it's just horrible.
I'm sorry you had to watch that.
Yeah,
but it creates an interesting true crime, which brings us to a brief. Let's end this with a brief talk about true crime novels, of taking something that happened and filling it in with this is the supposition, and this is what we wonder, and this is what we can't know, and this is what we might know, and those also have some power and writability.
I'm sure that's true. I don't think I've ever read one.
I haven't either.
In Cold Blood, Truman Capote.
Oh, no. I think that's a different thing. In Cold Blood is it's an exercise in literature. It's not a true crime novel. It's Truman Capote approaching a true crime and writing about it as best he can, and creating thereby the whole true crime genre. I don't think there was one before.
Yeah, I was going to say I would consider it a true crime novel as the first one.
Yeah,
it really was the first, because it shocked a whole nation to go out there, and suddenly here's the idyllic view of what the Midwest is like, and the idyllic view that people who grew up all wholesome and clean on farms are willing to just go shoot people for sport. Well, it let's just say blew that out of the water, as it were.
Well, it's like the Malcolm Gladwell novels. A bunch of my friends are up in arms because he's not an actual detective. No, he's not. He's a writer. Okay, and he's writing about things that he has spoken to people who are supposed experts, and he's presenting them publicly to you. But I would never go to Malcolm Gladwell and say, solve this problem for me, just as I would not go to Truman Capote and say, go be a detective. These are writers writing about other people's things and doing the best they can.
Mm-hmm. I would also, I think we're running near our end of time here, add one little line when you're writing right now. And I'm going to say that you caught me on this one because I wrote about a crime the way it happened. My neighbor was murdered when I lived in Boulder, Colorado. And I was first one on the scene, first one when my hands around the corpse's neck, first one to get yelled at in the bullhorn, please step away from the body with your hands up. And I wrote an exact description in my novel of what happened in that scene. And you were the ones who said, no, it's not realistic. And I said, well, it's entirely realistic. It's dead realism. But because there have been so many police procedural dramas, people are conditioned to believe that police are going to do all of the right thing in every circumstance in the right order, ignoring the fact that we have an entire justice system proving that they don't.
Yeah. There is a huge difference between something being true and something being credible.
There is indeed.
And it is the job of the novelist to be credible.
Yes. Even when writing about incredible things.
Even so. Yes.
Yeah. Because it was all right to write about what happened, but I had to go back and explain why it would work that a barefoot woman, standing outside would end up ordering policemen around. That just wouldn't happen.
Well,
and poor Dave Welsh, our sound engineer, who got frisked twice when I didn't get frisked at all.
Right.
Because not everyone is you, Jeannie.
I am just saying that if you have a hero, you're allowed to be heroic and do things that you just can't ordinarily do, especially because it's true in real life.
Yeah, because the heroes in real life get away with it. The rest of us get frisked twice. So,
well, don't write yourself up as a sidekick that way. Yeah. So there's the thing of the credible, I think, is important to say. I like the way you said that, is it has to be credible. It has to be believable. It has to be...
Yeah, it's the writer's weakest defense to say, but that's exactly how it happened.
Right.
Because your readers have not believed you.
Yes.
And consequently, you have done bad writing.
And it's true. And I had to go back and explain her entire thought process and explain that this was a young cop. And we haven't had a crime here in years. And this guy's probably never had to deal with it in any way. And wouldn't a voice of authority go down well right about now? I've got one of those.
Yes. Well, and also looking at these days with the emphasis on cops wearing cameras and so on, that when they're finally released, to find out that the official report was not what really happened.
And we're going to find that a lot. And I'm kind of looking forward to how that affects crime novels.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Frankly, over the next decade, as people start to see a lot more cases that have the difference between, what they expect on TV and what they're actually seeing. Because remember, we even got to see the people following the police around, busting in doors and things and doing everything exquisitely correctly because they had cameras on them.
Yes.
Now it's easy to forget if there's not a cameraman there.
Right.
Well, also the cameraman on the TV, they edit wildly. I just read a podcast on someone who followed cops around and dug into cops.
What podcast was it? Was it called?
I will tell you for the liner notes.
Excellent.
But he discovered things like people didn't actually, they showed them they said, here, sign the release. And if they didn't sign the release, they would still show them. Or they thought signing the release meant they'd be let go.
Oh.
And so they signed the release, ended up on television on the worst day of their lives.
Yes.
And stuff. So that was fascinating. Okay, that was fascinating.
Yeah.
And folks, just because it's on TV does not mean it's true.
That is true. Well, I will grab the link from you, and we will put the link to stories and the other things we've mentioned on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. You can also find us on Facebook or Twitter, and we live for emails, so please write to us. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the host. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre McGaffey-Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spider is David Welsh. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with a Morning Person, both by Michael Engberg. You can hear more from Michael Engberg on manyhatsmusic.com. Our podcast sponsor today is the Bean Scene, where a glorious place is to have coffee club in the morning. Bean Scene, Sunnyvale, California. Come visit us.